This story begins in Norway, in the year 1940. It was a time when the world was in the grip of World War II. Hitler was capturing one country after another, and now his next target was Norway. As he reached Norway, a secret mission was planned to stop him. In this mission, 12 soldiers were sent to a German airbase in Norway, aiming to cause maximum damage to the German forces. However, before they could act, the Germans spotted them and destroyed the entire airbase, capturing all the soldiers present. The soldiers tried to escape through the water, but the Germans caught them one by one. Among them, one soldier named Jane managed to slip away. He ran as fast as he could, but the Germans soon noticed and chased him. Jane kept running, eventually reaching a snowy region. As night fell, the Germans began to give up the chase because a freezing river blocked their path. Crossing it meant certain death. Meanwhile, Jane swam across that icy river, reaching the other side with his body nearly frozen. Despite his terrible condition, he kept moving, knowing the Germans would kill him if they caught him. Soon, he met two locals who took him in, gave him warm clothes and food, and helped him recover. Meanwhile, the superior officer of the German army, Curtis, visited the captured soldiers, but found only 11. He immediately asked about the 12th man. His men told him Jane had escaped but was likely dead from the cold. However, Curtis wanted to see Jane's body before believing he was dead. So, he ordered his men to find him at all costs. The next day, several of the captured soldiers were killed, while others were tortured in an attempt to learn about Jane's mission. On the other side, Jane reached an old woman who treated his injuries and gave him the address of a man. Jane, determined to save his remaining comrades, set off to meet this man. After he left, German soldiers came to the old woman and asked if any stranger had visited. She denied it and they left. Meanwhile, Curtis, still obsessed with finding the 12th man, beat the captured soldiers brutally. But they revealed nothing. Enraged, Curtis ordered his troops to search every house in the area, saying he wanted the 12th man at any cost. More than capturing him, Curtis just wanted to know if Jane was alive. To test survival chances, Curtis forced a prisoner to jump into freezing water, and the prisoner survived. Curtis then jumped in himself and also survived, concluding Jane could still be alive. Meanwhile, Jane reached the house of the man the old woman had mentioned. The man initially pointed a gun at Jane, but after hearing that the old woman had sent him, he let him in. Inside were the man's wife and daughter, who took good care of Jane, gave him warm clothes, and tended to his wounds. That night, the man's wife, who was a nurse, told Jane that many of her friends worked at the German hospital where his comrades were imprisoned. Jane was devastated to learn that many of his fellow soldiers had been killed. He felt all his efforts were in vain and became disheartened. Just then, the man's daughter handed him a map. Jane searched for Sweden on it, and the girl told him it was on the other side. Jane then planned to escape to Sweden, but to do so, he would have to cross the German border, which was heavily guarded day and night. Back at the German camp, the remaining soldiers were executed one by one. Curtis still insisted he wanted the 12th man's body. Though his men claimed Jane was likely dead, Curtis refused to believe it. He was determined to present Jane's body to Hitler. In the next scene, Jane reaches another man whose address had been given by the previous one. This man owned a ship that could take Jane to Sweden. On the way, he showed Jane a newspaper with his name on the front page. He explained that the search for Jane had become personal for Curtis, who was known for never letting anyone escape. Curtis had even received several awards from Hitler for his relentless efforts. If Jane reaches Sweden, it would be a huge defeat for Curtis, and it could even cost him his life. That's why Curtis records in a report sent to Berlin that all 12 soldiers have been killed. He does this to protect his reputation, as he still hasn't found Jane despite an intense search. In the next scene, the man drops Jane at the shoreline. From here on, Jane must continue his journey alone. As he moves forward cautiously, he unknowingly enters a German-controlled area. Surrounded by soldiers, he becomes terrified, but somehow, he manages to slip through them. Just then he suddenly collapses. We see that Curtis is also present nearby, but he doesn't recognize Jane and assumes he's just a local. Jane quietly moves ahead. But later, Curtis remembers Jane's face and realizes it was the man he's been hunting for days. He immediately boards a plane and starts chasing Jane. Curtis's plane spots him and opens fire. Jane tries to escape, but suddenly he falls into a narrow ditch, which hides him from sight. Unable to locate him, the plane flies away. After some time, Jane tries to get up, but he's too weak. He's badly injured, and snow has filled his eyes. He can barely open them. Still, he refuses to give up and keeps crawling forward. Meanwhile, Curtis's men arrive at the spot but find only Jane's belongings, not Jane himself. Though Jane is almost out of strength, he keeps pushing forward, his entire body buried in snow. In the next scene, we're introduced to a brother and sister named Marius and Gaten. German soldiers arrive at their home, show them Jane's picture, and ask if they've seen him. Marius and Gaten deny everything. Then, they spot Jane approaching from behind and quickly bring him into their home. They take care of him, but the woman in the house is terrified because Jane's wanted posters are everywhere, warning that anyone who helps him will be shot. Despite the risk, Marius and Gaten feed Jane and treat his injuries. Meanwhile, a soldier brings Jane's bag to Curtis. Inside, Curtis finds the map Jane was using, and from this, he realizes Jane's trying to escape to Sweden, beyond Hitler's control. Back at the house, Gaten takes great care of Jane. After 12 days, Jane regains consciousness, but he's eager to leave. Gaten tells him to rest more. Just then, Curtis returns to the area, having heard that Jane was seen nearby. He personally begins inspecting houses. As Curtis is about to reach the room where Jane is hiding, a medal gifted to him by Hitler falls from his jacket. While he stops to retrieve it, he forgets the room and leaves. In this way, Jane is saved once again. Now, Marius and Gaten decide to move Jane somewhere farther, so the Germans can't find him. They hide him in a small hut and tell him he must stay there for a few days. But Jane isn't doing well alone. He has constant nightmares of being captured and tortured by the Germans. One day, he wakes up and notices that 2 of his toes have turned black from frostbite. Realizing they could infect his entire leg, he painfully cuts them off. He screams in pain but knows he has no choice. 12 days later, Marius and Gaten return and inform Jane that his toes need to be properly removed by someone. Jane is relieved to hear this, and even happier when he learns that a way to Sweden has finally been arranged. They carry Jane on a stretcher to a cave and tell him that some boys will soon come to take him to Sweden. Marius and Gaten have helped many people, German, Russian, or otherwise. To them, it doesn't matter. They help people because they're human. Meanwhile, Curtis grows more anxious. It has been over 26 days, and there's still no trace of Jane. His reputation is at stake. Inside the cave, Jane's condition worsens. The temperature keeps dropping, and he is slowly freezing. Yet he clings to the hope that someone will come to rescue him. Finally, 4 days later, Marius assumes that Jane has made it to Sweden. Then, a boy, who is supposed to escort Jane, arrives and confirms it. When Marius realizes they had left Jane in the wrong cave, he and his companions rush back. They find Jane completely buried under snow. But when they check his breathing, they discover he's still alive. They quickly pull him out and give him hot soup. Marius returns home and tells Gaten the good news, that Jane is alive. Gaten is overjoyed and thanks God. That same night, the boys come back, place Jane on a stretcher, and begin moving him toward Sweden. But they face difficulties on the way and are forced to leave Jane in another cave. When Jane opens his eyes and sees the same boys again, he shouts at them in frustration. The boys explain that there's heavy patrolling outside, and their lives are at risk. Jane realizes he must continue hiding among the Germans for a few more days. One day, while Jane is sleeping, he starts remembering the past, how the Germans attacked his ship and all his companions were killed. He blames himself for not being able to save them. When he wakes up, he sees an old man sitting in front of him, treating his wounds. Over time, they become close. While talking, the old man shares his own story, how he once escaped imprisonment but still regrets not being able to save his companions. He tells Jane not to blame himself and urges him to reach Sweden, not just to survive but to show Curtis the truth. Meanwhile, Curtis watches a video of himself being honored for capturing 12 people. But deep down, he knows it's a lie, and it's eating him from the inside. Back in the cave, Jane's condition worsens. He feels he might die. He hallucinates and sees the girl who had given him the map. She asks, "Did you lose that map?" Jane nods and replies, "Yes, I lost it. Before leaving," she says, "I believe you'll find your own path. God writes the journey of the brave and innocent." After 89 days, Jane finally comes out of the cave. Today, he has to cross the border. He's given a gun and is to be taken to Sweden hidden among a herd of animals so the Germans won't spot him. Meanwhile, German soldiers arrive. They capture Marius and Gaten and beat them brutally, having discovered their role in helping Jane. In the next scene, Jane is moving with the animal herd when his stretcher slips in an accident. He falls, and the Germans spot him and open fire. Jane hides behind a mountain to protect himself. He pulls out his gun and considers ending his life. But just then, an animal appears. Jane fires near it in panic, and the animal runs, dragging Jane's stretcher with it. The Germans chase him, but Jane crosses the Norway border and enters Sweden. Now, even if the Germans wanna, they can't touch him. Jane is overwhelmed. He can't believe he survived. When Curtis hears that Jane has reached Sweden, he goes mad with rage. He wanted to capture Jane at any cost, but now he's lost him forever. Later in Sweden, Jane meets a man. His hands are tied to a rope so tightly that he can't even speak. He silently thanks the animal that saved his life. 3 months later, Jane has recovered fully. He submits his report to a senior and is honored with a bravery award. But Jane refuses to accept it. He says, "I'm not the brave one. The old woman, Marius, Gaten, and those 4 men who kept me alive for 150 days, they are the real heroes. Without them, I wouldn't be standing here." The war ends a few years later. In the final scenes, we learn that Marius and Gaten are still alive. After Hitler's death, Curtis is sentenced to death. This is the end of the story. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.